I get it. When you scroll through a sea of gaming laptops, everything looks polished on the product page, every angle of the chassis is a selfie-ready shot, and the specs are laid out like a brag board. Then you unbox it, fire it up, and a few weeks later you're wondering why the machine feels heavier than you expected, why the battery barely makes it through a single session, or why the screen looks great on paper, but feels washed out in a dimly lit room. That's the exact frustration I'm trying to dodge in this review, so you won't spend your hard-earned cash on a device that sounds perfect, but falls short when you actually sit down to game or edit. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The GIGABYTE AERO X16 lands in a sweet spot that most reviewers skim over. It's a 16-inch laptop that aims to be both a portable gaming rig and a creator's workstation, all while keeping a thin and light profile that's meant to slip into a backpack without turning your shoulders into a workout. On the surface, you've got an AMD Ryzen AI 7500U, an NVIDIA RTX 5060 GPU, a 165Hz WQXGA panel, 16 GB of DDR5, and a 1TB SSD. Those numbers can make anyone's eyes light up, but the real question is how they translate when you actually sit at a coffee shop, join a multiplayer match, or pull footage into DaVinci Resolve. First, let's talk about who will actually feel the gain from this blend of hardware. If you're a content creator who does a lot of photo or video editing on the go, the 2560x1600 resolution paired with the 165Hz refresh rate gives you a crisp canvas that's less tiring than a 1080p panel. The color gamut on the Aero series has historically leaned toward the Adobe wide range, which means you can make fairly accurate color decisions without needing an external monitor for most projects. The RTX 5060, while not the flagship GPU, sits comfortably in the sweet spot for 1080+ gaming and can handle some light 1440p work. Combine that with the AI-enhanced Ryzen processor, which can offload specific tasks like upscaling and background rendering, and you get a machine that won't choke when you throw a 4K video timeline into the mix. For freelancers who travel between client sites, this is probably the most compelling reason to consider the AERO X16. Now, for the gamer who lives for high frame rates in modern titles, the RTX 5060 will manage most esports titles at 120,144 frames per second and even older AAA games at a respectable 6,080 frames per second on high settings. If you're chasing ultra-high settings in the latest releases, you'll quickly notice the ceiling, but the laptop still offers a smooth experience without needing to drop settings to low. The 165Hz panel really shines here, because you can see the difference between 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second without any motion blur. The downside? The laptop's thermal design is slim, which means under prolonged heavy loads the fans will spin noticeably louder, and you'll see a modest clock throttling after 15 to 20 minutes of sustained gaming. In a real-world scenario, say, a 30-minute raid in an MMO, the performance dip is there but not catastrophic. You'll just hear a bit more fan whine, and might see frame rates dip a few tens of frames per second. Battery life is where many laptops in this class stumble, and the AERO X16 is no exception. With its 96Wh battery, you can expect roughly 4 to 5 hours of mixed use, some streaming, a bit of editing, minimal gaming. Push it into a 3-hour gaming marathon, and you'll be looking at the charger after an hour. That's not a surprise for a device packing a dedicated GPU, but it's a trade-off you need to accept if you plan to game away from an outlet. On the flip side, the 1TB SSD gives you ample room for games, media, and project files, and the read-or-write speeds feel snappy in day-to-day tasks. Copying a 5 GB video file takes under a minute, and launching large applications feels almost instantaneous. One of the less obvious strengths of the AERO X16 is GIGABYTE's GiMATE AI assistant. It's built into Windows 11 Home and integrates with the Copilot Plus suite to suggest performance tweaks based on what you're doing. When you launch a game, GiMATE will automatically shift the power profile to prioritize GPU frequency, and when you open Photoshop, it nudges the system to allocate more RAM to the application. I tested this by toggling between a game of Valorant and a video export session, and the transitions were smooth, no need to manually fiddle with power settings. For users who aren't comfortable diving into BIOS menus, it's a nice safety net. However, there are a few practical weaknesses that can bite you if you're not careful. The laptop's thickness is 16.75 mm, which is impressive for a device that houses a discrete GPU, but it also means the cooling pipes are limited in space. Consequently, the chassis can get warm to the touch during prolonged gaming, and you'll want to invest in a thin external cooling pad if you're a marathon.